What's up, Internet? This is Rambling Josh, and today I want to talk a little bit about a little game that goes by the name of Xenoblade. Or, it's gone by a few names, I guess, over the course of its lifetime. I think originally it was called something like Monado, the Beginning of the World, or something like that. But now it's usually referred to as either Xenoblade or Xenoblade Chronicles. And I've been playing this game recently, but before I talk about the game itself, I figured I'd give you a little bit of a history lesson, because the game's history is a big part of what prompted me to talk about this game specifically. So, Xenoblade came out a while ago in Japan. I think it was like a year and a half ago at this point. And it got rave reviews. It did very, very well in Japan, and everyone was really excited about this game coming over to other places, outside of Japan, because it was a very good game. It's a very high-class JRPG, and that's not really something that the Wii has really gotten a whole lot of. The Wii hasn't gotten a whole lot of exceptional games in general. I mean, there's a good few, but the Wii could use a few more good titles. But originally the game was kind of hinted that it would be released in other regions, but it just never really happened, and it just kind of fell off the radar after that, until fans of the game started kind of poking and prodding at Nintendo, and they decided that they didn't really care, and they just kept saying, we don't have any plans of releasing this game in other regions. There's actually this movement called Operation Rainfall, which aims to get Xenoblade, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower, all Japanese exclusive games at the moment. Well, no, that's not necessarily true, but they were all originally Japanese exclusive games, and Operation Rainfall aims to get all of them localized for North America. And Xenoblade is, I've always thought of it as kind of the headline title, so to speak. Last Story is pretty highbrow as well, but Pandora's Tower is usually considered like an afterthought. But that's beside the point. While I'm mentioning it, by the way, you should go support Operation Rainfall. I believe you can just Google them and find their website or whatever. But anyways, where was I? So yeah, Nintendo basically just said, we're not releasing these games in North America. Originally, they didn't say they had any plans to release them at all, but then they decided they were going to release them all in Europe. Okay. So here we are now today. Xenoblade is being released in Europe. The Last Story is coming out, I believe, in January in Europe. And I'm pretty sure Pandora's Tower is supposed to be coming out in like May or something. But anyways, Xenoblade specifically. So, it did excellently in Japan. It came out in Europe. It did excellently in Europe. Great reviews, great sales. The game now exists in English format. It's being released in English. Full English voiceover is completely localized for English. It's done excellently every region that it has been released, and they still refuse to release it in North America. Or at least if they have plans to do so, they certainly have not told us yet. Complete madness. What are you doing, Nintendo? This game is amazing. It's done so well everywhere that's being released. It's in English already. You don't have to relocalize it. Why is it not in North America? Well, anyways, through the use of voodoo magic, I managed to get my hands on the game, and I've been playing it quite a lot recently. I played it probably about 75 hours or so in the last week and a half. And I gotta say, it's better than I even imagined. This game is really good. I mean, there's certainly elements, I think, that wouldn't appeal to everyone, but for me at least, it's like exactly the JRPG that I've been waiting for years now. The JRPG market makes me kind of very sad lately. But anyways, so I decided that I would make this video and kind of talk about what this game actually is. Because, like I said, for one, I was very surprised when I played it just how good it actually is. Like, I knew this game got really good reviews, but I had no idea, like, all the awesome stuff in this game. It just took me by surprise, and I knew it was supposed to be a good game. So I figured I would talk about that today, and maybe bring a little bit more awareness to this game. Maybe, hopefully, kind of. I don't know. So anyways, the best place to start, I think, is the battle system. Because, I mean, I always... The first thing I always look at with pretty much any game is combat. Combat makes the world go round. So, the combat in this game it's actually very similar, I feel, to Final Fantasy XII in certain aspects. It's kind of like a real-time turn-based combat kind of thing, where like you'll do your physical attacks automatically, but you can like move around at will. And you only control 1 out of 3 party members at a time. So it's like Final Fantasy XII in that regard. But the biggest difference is you don't have like a menu that you scroll through or anything like that. It's just more, you do your normal attacks automatically. And then you have, I think it's 8 abilities that you can set per character. And those abilities, none of them cost like mana or anything. There's no MP points or anything like that. Your abilities are all cooldown based, and you can use those abilities. Some of them have restrictions when you can use them, but for the most part you can use them whenever you want. And then every character has what's called a talent or something like that. It's a special ability, and it can only be used when you fill up something called the talent gauge, and it's different for every character. So you have this kind of interesting thing where, how many characters are there? 7? Yeah, 7 characters, and each one of them plays a little bit differently. They all have like different ways where their abilities work and how they interact with their talent gauge and stuff like that. Like the main character, Shulk, he's got a lot of, you know, physical sword attacks and stuff, and they all do their thing, but every time you use a normal physical attack, which, like I said, goes off automatically, you fill up your talent gauge. And he's got a couple, at least one other ability that fills up his talent gauge as well when you use it. But when the talent gauge is full, you unlock, you can activate your sword special abilities, which I'll get to in a little bit. It's kind of linked to the story, and that lets you use a whole bunch of special abilities like buffs and stuff for your party. Another character works very similarly, but they're kind of designed as like a tanky character. So they have lots of like physical defense and stuff like that, and a lot of their abilities are designed to like grab the attention of all the enemies and stuff. And their special talent goes by the name of Mad Taunt, and it basically further grabs the attention of all the bad guys. Probably one of the more interesting characters is designed kind of more like a healer, but her weapon is an ether rifle that It shoots like magic out of it. But the idea for her is her talent gauge actually works in reverse. So she like shoots out healing bullets and stuff, and every time she uses an ability, it fills up her talent gauge a little bit. But when the talent gauge gets all the way full, her rifle overheats and she has to wait several seconds for it to cool down again. But at any time, you can activate your talent to cool off the rifle manually. So you can do this stuff where you like throw out a couple heals and then maybe nothing's happening for a couple seconds, so you can preemptively cool off your rifle again, so that if you have to use like a whole bunch of abilities all in a row, you don't overheat in the middle of your chain of attacks. Stuff like that. I mean, there's every character, they did a good job of every character having like a different style to them. And you can control every character. Like, you can only control one person at a time, but you can always choose which character you're controlling. You can't switch between them, like, mid-combat or anything like that, which is kind of annoying to me. But you can, in between battles, you can always switch around your party so that you're controlling a different character. And each one is a little bit different, and they're all kind of interesting to play in their own play style, and to kind of get used to all the little tricks for how to play each different character. So beyond that, there's a couple core kind of mechanics to this system that are different from your average game. One is a set of debuffs that is kind of like a combo system, almost in a way. So first there's this debuff that a lot of abilities can afflict that goes by the name of Daze. No, not Daze. Break. And when you can inflict Break on an enemy, a lot of enemies have like resistance or even immunity to it, but most enemies can be inflicted by Break. But Break itself doesn't actually do anything. However, when an enemy is broken, they can be inflicted by another debuff by the name of Topple. So if you have an ability that inflicts Topple, use it on a broken enemy and they'll be toppled. And a toppled enemy will fall over, they won't do anything for a few seconds, and they're basically taken out of the fight for a couple seconds. And I think it also makes them like more vulnerable. At least some enemies become more vulnerable when they've been toppled. And then a toppled enemy can also be dazed. So if you use a daze attack on a toppled enemy, they become dazed. So that whole thing's kind of interesting. I don't think it really plays a huge part in combat. There are times when it does, but not always. And then there is the party gauge. So every time you use an ability, pretty much every ability has like a specific purpose or a special function or whatever. Like the main character Shulk has a lot of them. He has like one attack called Slit Edge, where if you attack an enemy from the side with it, it will decrease their defense. So if you do that and you kind of activate the special function of that ability, it fills up the party gauge a little bit. And similarly, he's got like Backslash, which does like extra damage if you're attacking from behind, and there's all this stuff like that. It's kind of interesting, actually. Positional attacks play a fairly big part in the combat in this game, which I'll probably talk about a little bit later. But so when the party gauge fills up, it's divided into 3 little segments, and for every segment that fills up, you have the ability to revive one of your characters. So if one of your characters dies, you can walk up to them and just hit the B button, and they'll get back up on their feet, but it consumes 1 segment of the party gauge. And if your character dies, one of your allies can come up and revive you, and they will usually do that unless the AI is being particularly derpy at the moment. But the biggest thing that you're usually saving up for is if you get up to the 3 segments of the party gauge, the full gauge is full, you can do a combo attack, which is, fairly standard fare, but it's kind of neat. You can, like, It goes through your entire party. Everyone gets to execute one attack. All their abilities are taken off cooldown for the combo attack. And then, depending on your character's affinity with each other, which again I'll get into in a little bit, you have a chance to continue the combo past the first round of 3 attacks. And every attack gets sequentially stronger, particularly if they are of the same type. So a lot of your abilities are, they have like an icon color. So like your normal, pure damage dealing physical attack is red. A lot of any ability that inflicts break is pink. Any ability that inflicts topple is green. Any ability that inflicts daze is yellow, and so on and so forth. So if you chain a bunch of red attacks together, they'll become especially strong. Now, I mentioned a minute ago affinity. And affinity is something that plays a big part in this game. A lot of it has to do with your character growth and the storyline and stuff like that. But in battle, it plays a big part too, because your characters, whenever they get in like a bad situation, like if they become demoralized for whatever reason, like if they take a really big hit or something, their picture on their character frame and will start like drooping their head and stuff, and you can go up to them and encourage them, and they'll start fighting at full force again. Or if one of your characters gets dazed or something like that, you can walk up to them and help them out and free them from their daze and stuff like that. So a big part of it is kind of your characters really working together. And every time you do something like that, like encourage one of your allies, or a lot of times there will be this little thing where there's like a circle pops up on the screen, and another circle will start from like the outside of the screen and move towards the circle in the middle. And if you time it and hit the A button, or is it A or? Yeah, it's the A button. When the circle, the second circle meets the first circle, your party will like encourage each other, and you'll get like you'll dodge an attack or do extra damage for a little bit or something like that. And every time your party members kind of do something together like that, it actually improves the relationship between those characters, which is kind of interesting. But I think that about covers the battle system for the most part. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the story of the game. Now, the story for the most part is really, it's fairly standard JRPG fare. I mean, I think it's fairly good, but it's nothing like groundbreaking. For the most part, anyways. So basically, it starts off and you see these two like giants fighting each other. One is called the Mechonis, and the other is called the Bions. And then one of them like stabs the other one, and they just kind of freeze. And they just stand that way for several thousand years. And it turns out that somehow life starts growing on these giant things. So your characters are residents of the Bionis. You start off the game in a place called Colony 9. Well, you don't technically start there. There's a little scene before you get to Colony 9, but that's beside the point. So you live on the Bionis. It's completely dormant, and there's grass growing everywhere, and you've got like these villages and stuff. It's kind of weird, but it's also kind of interesting because you spend a lot of times going through areas. It's like they kind of give you this guided tour of it. It's like, oh, now we're walking up the Bionis' leg, and we're going around the Bionis' waist, and now we're going up the Bionis' spine, and now we're walking around the Bionis' wrist. It's kind of neat, I think. And every time you get to a new area, they show you like a picture of the Bionis, and they put like a little blip on it to show this is where this area is on the Bionis. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So there's the Bionis, but then there's also the Mechonis, and that's where the bad guys live. There's this race of machines called the Mechon, a very inspired name, and people don't like the Mechon a whole lot, and with good reason, because the Mechon, they like to eat people. They kind of use people for energy, or something like that. So they basically, you know, eat people to keep themselves going. So the game starts out with this giant battle between the people of Bionis and the Mechon. And it turns out the Mechon, they're pretty resilient types. So there's only this one special weapon that's very effective against them, and it goes by the name of the Monado. But the thing about the Monado is that it's really hard to wield. Like, it's got like a lot of unstable energy or something like that. So the only person that can really use it is this guy by the name of Dunban. And using it really drains him. And he kind of overdoes it a bit in this first battle, and he basically completely loses the use of his right arm. But they end up beating the Mechon. So then we warp forward a year later, and Dunban he's a guy who lives in Colony 9, but we don't really see a whole lot about him, for a while anyways. And the main character is a guy by the name of Shulk. And he spends his life basically researching the Monado. So anyways, bad things end up happening. The Mechon come back, they attack Colony 9. Turns out Shulk is pretty good at using the Monado. In fact, he's better than Dunban ever was. And this takes everyone by surprise. Except for the player, because it's not surprising at all. So, from there, it's mostly standard JRPG fare, you know. You travel around, bad things happen, you find stuff out, you save the world, all that. But one of the most striking things about the story for me is there's this one aspect of it. See, the thing about the Monado is it gives Shulk visions. So he has the ability to get like little glimpses into the future to kind of see bad things that are happening. So like the second he picks it up, basically he's like, oh, I can see what my enemies are doing before they do it, so I'll just like dodge out of the way and be completely invincible. And that's neat, I guess. But the whole future visions thing, they actually did a really good job of like integrating that into the gameplay, so it really feels like an important aspect of the story. I mean, throughout the story they kind of make a big deal out of, you know, I can see the future, so like, how do I change fate and stop the bad things from happening, and can I protect everyone and stuff like that. But when it gets down into the gameplay, there's these really interesting, a couple of interesting things that they do with it. So one is in combat, a lot of times when an enemy is kind of gearing up to do something bad, something particularly bad, usually something that would like kill a character or something, you'll get a little vision of that, and they'll show you like, this is the enemy that's using it, this is how much damage it'll do, and this is the guy who's going to get raffle stomped. And then you have like several seconds, like 8 or 12 or something like that, to kind of react to that. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. And it gives you the chance to kind of prevent this from happening. And usually that's a very good idea to do, because otherwise, needless to say, bad things will happen. And so you get the chance to change the future within the span of like a 15-second period. It's like, I can prevent this really bad thing from happening, or make it not quite so bad, at least. Or prepare for it, or whatever. And I thought that was a really interesting way of integrating the kind of future sight directly into the combat, but it's also not like a really clunky mechanic. It's pretty easy to use. But it actually doesn't end there. See, I guess I should probably mention, at least, that a big part of this game is kind of exploring and doing quests for people and stuff like that. And, I mean, it can be a big part of the game. I mean, you could technically just sprint through the game and not do a lot of that. But a very large portion of the content of the game is made up of doing side quests and stuff. So, if you, like, collect an item, and someone down the road might need it for a quest, you don't want to sell that item, right? Because then you would just have to collect it again, which would be annoying. So a lot of times what they will do is you'll pick up an item and then you'll get a vision that's like, oh, that's the third monkey tail. Why did Ted want these again? So you know, oh, I just got a vision. Someone's going to need this item, and they're going to need X amount of these items, so I shouldn't sell it. In fact, I should find more of them so that I have these items ready when the time comes. And similarly, a lot of times when you are talking to someone, and they're like going to give you a quest or something, they'll say something, and then you'll get a vision of like, this is what's really happening. So it's a lot of times it's in regards to like, someone thinks something is a certain way, but really it's like someone else is like pulling a fast one on them or something. So you might see a vision of like the first person like getting like, he's like, I don't know, crying or something, and the second person is like dancing around them laughing, or I don't know, something. And so you kind of really know what's going on, but then you have to kind of take that knowledge and find a way of like showing people the truth and like exposing the second person or whatever, but without just saying, hey, I can see the future, this is how it really is, because that would be kind of suspect. So all these things I think that are really neat, and they're really kind of going above and beyond, I feel, because it's like, here's this core story mechanic, let's integrate it into every aspect of the gameplay. And it's something that, you know, a lot of games I don't think would have done, but they did a good job of it, I feel. And it's really kind of an interesting way of doing things to me. Now, speaking of quests, I should probably talk a bit about those. So, like I said, a big part of the game is like exploring and doing quests and stuff. So let me give you a quick idea of what I do every time I get to a new area. So I get to an area, a lot of the areas are like really big and wide open and stuff. Usually right near the entrance to the area there's a couple of NPCs, and they'll have a couple quests for you. So I walk in, grab those quests, and then I just start exploring. I walk all over the map, go everywhere I can. Usually they give you a little flag on your map that says, you know, this is where you have to go for the story. So I avoid that. I explore every possible place in this area without going near that flag to advance the story. Look for the enemies to kill or whatever I need to do for this quest. And also spread throughout each area are these little blue orbs that you can collect. And those are quite literally collectibles. That's what they're called. Usually they're just, you know, something that is found in that area, like a fruit or an animal or something. How you pick up animals and shove them in your bag, I'm not really sure, but RPG inventories has been a mystery for a very long time, so whatever. So I explore, I find the monsters, I collect the collectibles. And the thing about the collectibles is for every area there's this thing called the Collectopedia. And every area has kind of like a page dedicated to it. So when you get to a new area, if you find the collectibles, you can take one of each type and shove it in your Collectopedia and say, you know, I found this item for this area. And if you collect all the specific the Collectopedia is broken down into groups. There's fruits, there's vegetables, there's animals, there's bugs, there's nature, and there's special. And so every time you finish one of those categories, find everything in that category for that area, you get a prize. And if you finish off the entire page for that area, you get another prize. So a lot of times I'll end up filling out the Collectopedia page before I even go advance the story. And this can take, you know, a couple hours to just explore everything in an area. And a big part of the exploration is actually pretty rewarding. See, every time you find there's two different things. There's a location and there's a landmark. The location is just like, oh, there's a waterfall here. Okay, that's nifty. And then a landmark is like, hey, there's a giant tower here. That's nifty. And oh yeah, I can now warp back to this tower anytime I want. So every time you find a location or a landmark, you get experience, you get AP, and you get SP. Experience is self-explanatory. AP is just art points. They let you level up your abilities, which is fairly self-explanatory. And SP I'll get into a little bit later. So you actually get pretty good rewards for just exploring. You can get a pretty good chunk of experience in AP and SP. And actually, at least in my experience, exploring is actually probably the biggest source of SP throughout the game. So exploring really pays off, and if you manage to find all of the landmarks and locations in a certain area, that completely uncovers the map for that area. So there's a lot of kind of just running around and poking about if you want to. And then there's the quests. So a lot of times you'll get quests just from random NPCs that are like, go do this for us, and it's just your average quest. It's like, you get a bunch of money, maybe some experience for it, and that's that. But a big focus of the game is there's this thing called the affinity chart. It's basically this giant grid. Well, not a grid, but it's this giant page, and when you start off the game, it's completely empty. In the very middle, there's this little circle thing, and if you select it, it'll bring you to a page where it shows all of your party members. And it'll show you like the relationship that all of your party members have with each other. So you want to improve the relationship between your characters because that makes them fight better together, and you can get better chain attacks and stuff like that. There's also, I guess it's as good a time as any to go into SP. So SP is basically, the way it works is every character has a list of skills. And the way these work is, every character has like 3 different paths that they can go down, and as you get SP, you progress down one of the paths, whatever path you've chosen for each character, and you get different skills that are like passive benefits and stuff. But there's also this thing called, what's it called? Skill sharing or affinity link or something like that. And that's basically where each character also has the ability to equip the passive benefits from your other party members. And so the better your relationship is with each individual character, you can equip more passive benefits from that particular character. So if you only have like a level 1 relationship with another character, which, you know, is displayed on the affinity chart as just like a little yellow like straight face, then you can only equip 1 passive benefit from that character. But if you have a level 5 affinity with that character, which is like a pink heart or pink face with like hearts and stuff, then you can equip 5 passive benefits from that character. So increasing the affinity between your party is a big thing, but it doesn't stop there. See, throughout the world, there's a whole ton of named NPCs, and it's broken up into 5 different characters. different areas. But you start off in Colony 9, so I'll just talk about Colony 9. So in Colony 9, if you walk around and talk to all these named people, they show up as on your minimap as like little blue blips. And if you talk to someone, it pops their face onto the affinity chart. And it gives you, you know, you can hover over that person. It says, you know, this is their name, this is how old they are, this is what species they are, this is when you can find them, and this is like a little description of, you know, their personality. And then, you know, eventually you'll have a whole bunch of, you know, faces on your chart, just showing these are all the people in this area, or at least all the people that you've talked to. But if you keep talking to people, after, like, if you have, say, two brothers on the chart, and you talk to one of them, and then you talk to the other one, and then you talk to one of the, like one of them again or something, it'll give you like a little link between them. One of them might say like, "Oh, my brother John is such a pain," and then there'll be a little link between John and his brother on the affinity chart, and it'll say like, on the link it'll say like, "is a pain" or something like that, and that describes the relationship between those people. So you have this system where it's like you find all the people, and then over the course of the game you kind of find out all the relationships that they have. Like, this person thinks this about this person is related to this person in this way, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting system where it's like you have all these characters, but over time you just learn more and more and more and more about them. So it's like you gradually learn, you know, oh, this person is connected to this person? That's interesting. And you might not know it right away. Like, a lot of times people will say like, oh, my brother is such a pain, but they won't say who the brother is. So you have to kind of guess or whatever. It doesn't even really matter at that point. But if you like do quests for a bunch of other people in that area, or progress the story a bunch or something, and come back to talk to them, then they might say, oh, you won't believe what John did. He's such a pain. And then it'll link the two. And beyond just, you know, creating this chart of faces and links, a big part of the game, you know, probably the vast majority of your playtime, if you actually do it all, is doing quests for these people. So a lot of times, you know, John will say, my brother thinks I'm a pain, so what can I do to gain his approval or whatever? So he's like, oh, go kill 17 crabs and collect their shells. I'll give the shells to my brother as a gift. So you do that, bring John the shells, and he'll be like, my brother will like me for sure now. So you go to his brother, and he'll be like, oh, John's not such of a pain anyway, after all. So then the link between them will like improve. Their relationship will improve, and it'll be like, good brothers or something like that. So their relationship has improved, and that's reflected on your chart. So not only do you kind of learn how these people all exist together, but you also actively improve their relationships with each other. And the more that you do to help out a specific area, say Colony 9, that improves your affinity with that area. So that's also kind of represented. That's kind of neat too. It's so you get to see, you know, wow, I've helped a lot of people in this area. And I just think the whole thing is just really interesting, because it's like you really get to kind of learn who these people are. And I mean, it's a little bit convenient that everyone knows everyone, but I mean, I just think it's interesting because you just play the NPC growth in this game is just kind of unparalleled. And there's also that combined with the fact that there's this time system where like there's a 24-hour clock that progresses continually, But at any time, you can open up your clock and switch the time to whatever time that you want. So certain people only appear in certain places at a specific point in time. Usually, people will either appear at day or at night, and some people move around a little bit, and some people have a little bit narrower windows when you can find them. But in general, it's either day or night. And it actually reminds me a lot of Majora's Mask, where it's like everyone kind of goes about their routines, and it's like all of the areas just feel really kind of alive. It's like they're full of all these NPCs that you can talk to and learn about and help out and improve the relationships with other people. You have these interesting quest lines where it's like a good example is one in Colony 9. There's this captain who is kind of down on her luck, and she's got like a troublesome subordinate who doesn't like her and stuff like that. And throughout the course of the game, or at least a large portion of the game, you kind of help her out. So it's first like, go find her subordinate and stop him from sleeping. And then progressively you do more and more quests for her, and she's like, oh, I'm getting more respect now, and now my subordinate likes me, and people are starting to notice me, and I'm getting close to a promotion or something like that. So she's kind of, moving up in the world. And there's this other guy, the colonel or whatever, who's like the leader of the defense force that she's a captain of, and he's like, oh, I'm looking forward to retiring or something, but if only there was someone to replace me. So it's just like, eventually those two storylines are going to cross over. You know that this captain is eventually going to at least attempt to become the colonel, or want to, or something like that. So it's like, I can make that happen. And that whole process to me is pretty interesting. I think it's pretty fun. I mean, I'm a bit of a completionist, so I tend to be the type who, I explore everything, I find all the collectibles, I gotta do all the quests. And I find it really rewarding. I mean, I think a lot of people would find it kind of boring, but that's kind of beside the point. So, I guess I've kind of raved about the game enough. Now, this is not a perfect game. I don't really tend to believe in a perfect game, to be honest. But, so I just to be fair, I should probably talk about some of the faults of this game as well. So, one is, of course, the fact that so much of the game is not story-related. Not the main plot, anyways. Like, I've literally spent, 10, 15-hour portions where, I don't progress the plot at all. I literally do nothing but run around and do quests for people. I don't mind doing that. I mean, there have only been one or two times where I thought, oh god, I don't want to do any more quests, just get on with the story. But if that's really not you, then you have to choose between either like sprinting through the game and missing out on a large portion of what this game has to offer, or spending a ton of time doing stuff that isn't related to the story at all. And, insofar as the quests go, for the most part, they're pretty good. Most of them aren't really kind of groundbreaking or anything. I mean, most quests are either, go find X amount of collectibles or X amount of materials that drop off a specific monster, or go kill X amount of monsters, or go talk to this person, or whatever. So the quests tend to be a little bit mundane. They do mix it up a little bit here and there, but I never really found it to be too big of a problem, except that there are some quests are just really way too annoying. Just to be kind of blunt. It's like, go find 3 of this collectible, which is like a 1% chance of finding from one of the blue orbs or whatever. Like, you can literally spend hours looking for this item and never find it. A lot of times there's a way, every named NPC, you also have the ability to trade with them. So a lot of times if you find the right NPC, you can trade for that item instead. So there is that, but that's not really that much less annoying. Either, spend hours looking around or spend hours talking to every NPC and looking for what they have to trade. It's not much better of an option. And I want to say sometimes certain monsters are hard to find, but that's not really so much the case. I think the bigger thing is that the quests need to be a little bit better at indicating what exactly you need to do. Because a lot of times they'll be like, go kill 13 of this monster. I'm not going to tell you where you find it. I'm not going to tell you that you can only find it at nighttime. No, you got to find that out on your own. And it's kind of strange, actually, because the whole, both the combat style to a degree, but also the whole way the gameplay plays out with all the quests and stuff, it really reminds me a lot of an MMORPG. And a lot of MMOs these days have a thing where, like, if you open up the map, it'll give you, like, a little highlight area. It's like, if you go here, you can do this quest. And I kind of feel like something like that would help this game out a lot. Like, if you open up your map and highlight a little area and said, there's monsters that you have a quest to kill right here. Go here. Go here to do the quest. I mean, I guess that would take away from the exploration a little bit, which does tend to be a fairly big part of the game, just because so many of the areas are just so open and so vast and stuff like that. But I think it would be a good trade-off. Like, you lose a little bit of exploration, but there's already a lot of incentive to explore just because of the benefits you get for finding new landmarks and new locations and stuff like that. The other thing, probably one of the bigger things that annoy me about this game, is that the difficulty curve of this game is, like, non-existent. And I think a lot of that's kind of on... It depends a bit on how you end up playing the game. But, like, for me, I go everywhere, I find everything, I do all the quests. And I find that, 99% of the time, I'm an exceptionally high level. Like, there have been areas where I've just now gotten to this area in the story, and the monsters in this area are already 10 levels below me. So I've done all the content that's available to me, and now everything down the road is just way too easy. And the way the game flows just doesn't really help that, because it's like every area past the very first area, if you do the quests and stuff, it's like, okay, so killing the monsters it's a complete joke. The way under my level. So they don't give me any experience. Which, normally that would be fine. That would, like, level itself out eventually. But you get so much rewards from completing quests and finding areas and all that, which is great. I mean, I love getting those kind of rewards for doing this extra stuff. I think that's a really great incentive, and I love games that do that. But at the same time, because that exists, you can get a whole ton of levels even without getting any experience from killing the monsters. You cannot kill a single monster for, 10 hours and still level up like 3 or 4 times. And that just means you're that much further ahead of the curve. There have been areas where by the time I leave the area, I'm 20 levels above the monsters in that area. And it just gets kind of ridiculous. And it's a bit of a shame, too, because the battle system, it can be fairly strategic. I mean, if you're, playing, say, like the healer character or something, the battle system can be very fun. I mean, I tend to kind of prefer that role in this kind of game, because just straight up, doing damage is pretty consistent whether the fight is easy or not. Whereas the healer character thing, for the easy fights, there's no challenge there. Like, you don't even have to heal, because you get healed automatically between battles. So you don't really get a chance to get those challenging fights all that often, and even most of the time, boss fights aren't that hard. Granted, I'm not. I want to say I'm about 2/3 of the way through the game right now, and it is starting to get a little bit harder. I do have to say that. Past probably, not quite the midway point, but around there. The difficulty does start to ramp up a little bit, so maybe that'll change more towards the end game. But I think it's a pretty legitimate complaint for the first 70 hours of the game. Now, let's see what else. The graphics in this game. Now, I don't tend to be the type that really cares about graphics. That said, I like good graphics, but I've always been the type that I don't really care about high fidelity so much as long as you do a good job with the graphics that you have, you can make a game look good without being, super sharp or whatever. I mean, there are plenty of Super Nintendo games out there that had amazing graphics that I still think are great. But then you have a game like, I don't know, Mario 64, where it's like, I mean, it's good that they did what they did. They're trying to like push the thing to its limits, but it's like they're not really ready to do that yet, so it ends up looking kind of bad. And in a way, that's kind of what I feel like Xenoblade is. I mean, they did a good job of making a lot of the environments and stuff look really impressive, but probably the biggest downfall is that the texture work in this game is kind of terrible. I mean, that's just all there is to it. I mean, it's not really that surprising. The Wii isn't the most powerful system ever. But I mean, if you look at a game like Mario Galaxy or Super Smash Bros. Or Skyward Sword, the graphics in that looks quite good. Xenoblade just doesn't compare. Some things do look good, but the texture is, for the most part, terrible. But anyways, I think that about covers it, really. I mean, I don't really... There really aren't that many things that I have to nitpick about this game. I mean, when it comes down to it, honestly, one of the biggest things that I dislike about this game is the fact that it doesn't lend itself to an LP format very well, because I would love to do a Let's Play of this game. But because of the way the game works, it just doesn't really lend itself. But I mean, that's not really something you can critique the game on. So I mean, all told, I mean, I think it's an excellent game. It's more than deserved all the praise and sales that it has gotten so far. I can't imagine why Nintendo of America has not brought this to North American shores yet. It's an amazing game. I'm totally, completely enjoying the hell out of it. I can't wait to play more of it. It's just getting better the more I play of it. The more I get into the story, the better it gets. It's got some faults with it. I mean, no game is without faults, but it's a very, very good game. And honestly, like, I have absolutely no qualms if this game... I don't want to say when this game comes out in North America, but realistically, if this game ever comes out in North America, even if I've played through the entire game, I've beaten every single thing in it, I will buy this game. This game deserves my money, and Nintendo of America needs to see that this game, North Americans like this type of game too. It's an amazing game, and Nintendo of America, like, they have no business not bringing this over, because people will eat this up. This game is amazing.